Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the two of you in the audience who don't know who I am, I'm George Blumenthal, the Chancellor of UC Santa Cruz. And I want to welcome you all to Launch, a celebration of the UC Santa Cruz student experience. Launch is what we do for students. We launch them into a great college experience for their career, for their graduate school, and for a bright future. And we're kicking off this alumni weekend by celebrating the UC Santa Cruz student experience. I hope I'll see all of you tomorrow when we have our Banana Slug lunch. We'll have teach-ins with faculty, we'll have a wine reception, and much, much more. So this is really the launch also of Banana Slug weekend. And we have a great program for you tonight. Our keynote speaker will be Leon Panetta, who will talk in just a few minutes about the importance of education. I'm so proud of what we offer our students. From our colleges to our hands-on learning leadership opportunities, UC Santa Cruz truly is unique. And we also have a uniquely beautiful setting. All you have to do is to look out the window to see that. Our founders had a vision for a new and different kind of university, combining the best of a small liberal arts college model with the opportunities of a major research university. Nearly 50 years of making our mark on the world, we've developed outstanding programs in genomics and astronomy, in the value of social justice, in environmental leadership, in our Baskin School of Engineering, and in the intersection between arts and sciences. Many of you in this room know us well, and the word is finally getting out. We had a record year this year for applications for admission to UC Santa Cruz. Roughly 49,000 students applied to be new students at UC Santa Cruz. That's quite a change from what it was a decade ago. So the word is leaking out. And I will tell you that we will be enrolling in the fall the most diverse class of undergraduates that we've ever enrolled before. And close to 50% of our enrolling undergraduate students will be first-generation students. That is, they will, when they graduate, be the first in their families, or first generation in their families, to earn a four-year college degree. And I think that's something we can be very proud of as a public research university. Now, I have a little bit of an advantage because I was able to get a sneak peek at some of our entering frosh, or really the class of 2018, I should call them, during receptions for admitted students over the last few weeks. And I have to tell you, we have some amazing students coming this fall. I'm really looking forward to it. And for our students who will be arriving for that class of 2018, I can tell you those students will have a unique experience. I never tire of hearing them talk about what UC Santa Cruz means to them. Earlier this evening, we put students in the spotlight upstairs so more people could hear directly from our students what they were doing. And now, it is a pleasure for me to introduce one of our students, a current UC Santa Cruz student, Helen Porter. Helen is a student at Kresge College. I guess she didn't enroll in the college that's her namesake. But she is a history major, and she is a member of the class of 2014. She is currently the co-director of the Gale Project, a collaborative social history project that explores the long history of the United States presence in Okinawa. I could tell you a lot more, but that would be inappropriate because I'd much rather have Helen tell you a whole lot more. So let me welcome to the stage Helen Porter.
Thank you, Chancellor Blumenthal. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by sharing with you a brief anecdote, if I may. Winter quarter of my freshman year, I took Professor Terry Burke's history class on the making of the modern Middle East. On the first day, Professor Burke opened his lecture by asking us why we should study the Middle East. And that question floored me because it had never occurred to me that I could learn things for a larger purpose, that they could be relevant to anything other than themselves. That first day, not only did I decide to become a history major, but I was also introduced to the idea that what we study in the classroom matters to our lives, to our communities, and to the world. When I think of my experience as a student at UCSC, I realize that being a banana slug has allowed me to be part of a global network. From my hometown of San Francisco to UCSC, to Latin America, to Asia, and back again. My education here has allowed me to bring the skills learned in the classroom to my learning outside of the classroom, forming interdisciplinary, intercommunal, and international connections. One of the most valuable things about being a student here is that UCSC encourages its students to do just that, to look beyond the classroom and explore what it means to be a global citizen and a leader through programs like Education Abroad, student-led performance activities, and research groups like the Gale Project, all of which I have been lucky enough to be a part of. The Gale Project, as Chancellor Blumenthal introduced it, is an international public history project led by Professor Alan Christie that uses a set of photographs taken in Okinawa in the early 1950s to explore the relationship between the United States and Okinawa since the end of World War II. As co-director of the project, I have not only had the privilege of working with the amazing and inspirational Professor Christie, but also the opportunity to develop professional skills in my field. My research, focusing on the Okinawan diaspora to Latin America, combines the interest and language skills I developed during my 6 months living abroad in Chile with interconnecting issues regarding the Pacific War and Japanese-American internment. The Gale Project and opportunities like it provide students with the chance to not only discover what it is they are interested in, but also the guidance and tools to explore the topic in a self-directed manner and in collaboration with other students. I want to conclude my talk by letting you in on a little secret that I try not to tell people at UCSC. UCSC was not my first choice school. In fact, it was my last. I thought I wanted to go to Sarah Lawrence and study dance. But UCSC was the only school that gave me enough financial aid to attend, so I came here. And I'm so glad I did. Always forefront in my mind is the reality that without the financial aid and funding that I have received, none of the incredible opportunities I have had would have been possible. I am continually conscious of and grateful for the investment that this university made in me, my education, and my growth. Without that investment, I would not have been able to live and study in Santiago de Chile, broadening my reality of the world and learning from a people, a history, and a culture different from my own. I would not have had the chance to choreograph and perform in dance shows through UCSC Theater Arts, which giving me invaluable leadership skills while allowing me to develop creatively and do what I love. I would not have traveled to Japan in December to do research with Professor Christie on the Gale Project. These experiences, among so many others, have fundamentally altered the way that I look at the world. And without the investment UCSC made in me, I would quite literally not be here today. Because of this, I want to take a moment to personally say thank you to every single one of you who makes scholarships and awards like the ones I have received possible. Your generosity changes students' lives. I know because it changed mine. came here because I could afford it, but I stayed because UCSC is an incredible place, and I am grateful every single day to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Helen. What a great story. You know, students and alumni are our best ambassadors. And I know that many of you have talked with students during your strolling dinner earlier this evening. And this entire evening was designed to give you opportunities to engage with students, to hear from them about their own hands-on learning experiences. Tonight, we are highlighting a key initiative of the Campaign for UC Santa Cruz, the transformative student experience that we offer to our students. Students are at the very heart of this campaign. The Campaign for UC Santa Cruz is looking ahead, building on our success, and laying the groundwork for the next 50 years. I am delighted tonight to announce a major support from our students, for our students from one of our most accomplished alums. Julie Packard just donated $1 million to support our students. Many of you know her, but Julie is the executive director of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is now entering its 30th year. And the aquarium, when she started it, was a new model of an aquarium that champions conservation. She got her start in marine science right here at UC Santa Cruz because she had an incredible experience here, earning a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in biology. And now she's giving back in a big way. Julie chose to support low-income and underrepresented minority students in the sciences. She's expanding access to our quarter-long, in-depth field studies courses. And she's giving more students extraordinary summer research opportunities, including hands-on, paying laboratory experience. And she's also providing academic support with her gift. Julie's gift will make a tangible difference in the lives of hundreds of students over the next 5 years. You know, it's incredible to think of the difference that she is making, and we're so grateful. So, speaking of people who've made a difference, it's now time for me to introduce our keynote speaker, Leon Panetta. I almost don't know where to begin. He has such an amazing record. Leon was elected to Congress, defeating a longtime member in his first election to start the first of his 16 years in Congress. He had an incredible record as a congressman, and among his many, many accomplishments, he was the person who wrote the bill that established the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. After leaving Congress, Leon became the director of the Office of Management and Budget, and then left to become the chief of staff to President Bill Clinton. And then he retired, but not really. Leon returned to Washington to become the director of the CIA and later the Secretary of Defense. Again, many accomplishments, but it was Leon Panetta, as Secretary of Defense, who certified that the military was ready to end its longtime practice of don't ask, don't tell. Leon has long been a friend of UC Santa Cruz. He was a foundation board member of the UCSC Foundation. And now his son Jimmy is on the UCSC Foundation board. Today, Leon is focused on the Leon and Sylvia Panetta Institute of Public Policy, located at the CSU MB campus, CSU Monterey Bay. They established a popular lecture series which has been going on now for 17 years. It's one of the few places where people are actually coming together to work together and cross the political aisle. In fact, Leon himself, early in his career, crossed the political aisle and showed that it could be done. He is a devoted public service and an advocate for education. And he served his country, his state, and his community exceptionally well. And he has been focused on cultivating tomorrow's leaders. I personally have enjoyed on a number of occasions the opportunity to go down to Monterey to speak with some of the student leaders that he's gathered together, or I should say Sylvia and Leon have gathered together at their institute. Really impressive. They have proven to be a model for developing leadership, service, and engagement. In fact, when I look at Leon's career, it has been success after success after success. I can think of only one area in which Leon has failed miserably, and that area is retirement. I think Leon is now on his third or fourth failed retirement. Please join me in welcoming Leon Panetta to UC Santa Cruz.
Thank you very much, George, for that very kind introduction. It's a great pleasure for Sylvia and I to be able to come up here and again enjoy the remarkable campus that you have, but more importantly, the remarkable students who are so important to not only this campus and this community, but to our future. I look forward to the opportunity to be able to share some thoughts with all of you at this very special event. And I want to congratulate Helen for the work that she's doing. I told her she's dealing with Okinawa. I dealt with Okinawa as Secretary of Defense, and it was a challenging issue. And I'm very interested in the work that she does do because it's something we have been working at. I'm extremely honored to be able to have this chance. When George asked, I said, of course, I'll be happy to be able to come here. This area is very much a part of my home. As you know, I was born and raised in Monterey, here on the Central Coast, and for those of you that aren't aware of it, having traveled now with several presidents, having traveled on my own in the positions that I've held across the world, I've been to most places throughout the world, both good and bad. But there is no place as beautiful as the Central Coast of California. So don't forget that. No place. And it is good to be home, and it's good, frankly, to be 3,000 miles from Washington. As I mentioned, I was born and raised in Monterey, and son of Italian immigrants. And I often mention that, like millions of other immigrants, my parents came here with very little language ability, no money, few skills. And I used to ask my father why he would travel all of that distance to come to a strange land. And although they came from a poor area in Italy, they had the comfort of family. Why would you leave that? Why would you leave everyone you knew, your family, your life, and suddenly travel all of that distance to a strange land? And my father said that the reason was because my mother and he believed that they could give their children a better life. And that is the American dream. It's the dream that we all have for our children. And in many ways, it is the dream that this university is all about. And for that matter, the 1,700 other universities and colleges throughout this country, the primary goal of those universities is to give our children a better life. UCSC has done that. In 2015, you will celebrate your 50th anniversary. And you have truly come a long way from that moment. I saw this in a photograph where Dean McHenry and Clark Kerr and Governor Pat Brown were dedicating this campus at the Rock. It's gone through a lot of transformation. And today, there is no question that UCSC is a leading university in the nation. And you ought to be extremely proud of the record that you have in research and sciences, the great work that you are doing with regards to promoting liberal arts, but more importantly, promoting research in so many different areas. The tribute for that belongs to the leadership of someone like George Blumenthal, the great leadership that you've provided as head of this university. And also, of course, to the staff and to the faculty and all the great work that they do, and to the students, and also to the supporters of this campus. Particularly these days, universities have a hard time being able to achieve the goals that they have to achieve without the broad support of people like yourselves who are willing to help contribute to make this a success. And so to all of you as supporters and to this community of Santa Cruz that supports this university, my tribute to all of you for what you do. And lastly, let me just mention the honor of being here at an Institute of Higher Education. Sylvia and I are proud to have started our Institute for Public Policy. And so we deeply appreciate the role that education plays. Our goal in our institute is to try to inspire young people to get involved in public life. And it's an extremely important challenge today. But a fact is that education is not only important to the success of students and their careers, it is critical to the success of our democracy. Critical. Our forefathers, in their genius, built a remarkable system of government that was very much designed by what they had learned from the Enlightenment, from people like Locke and Hobbes and others. And coming out of the Enlightenment, they knew what they didn't want to have, that they didn't want to centralize power in any one branch of government. They didn't want a king. They did not want a king parliament. They didn't want a star chamber court. And they created this remarkable system of three separate but equal branches of government, each a check and balance on the other. It is a very effective formula throughout these more than 200 years, a very effective formula for limiting power. We've gone through ups and downs where power, was asserted by a president or by the court or by a Congress, but the reality is it balances out. It is balanced out because of these checks and balances. It is a great formula for limiting power. It also happens to be a great formula for gridlock. And the reality is that our forefathers understood that could happen. And for them, the key the key to being able to break that gridlock in many ways rested with an informed public, a people who understood the issues and were willing to elect representatives who would debate, who would express their views, but who would ultimately find consensus. And in many ways, that's what they did when they designed the Constitution. Very different views as to what should have been in the Constitution, but they arrived at a consensus as to what that document should look like. The key to our success and our survival over 230 years is the ability of our people to understand and be involved in what our democracy is all about. But if there is any lesson in history, it is that we cannot take our democracy for granted. It took only 250 years for democracy to disintegrate in ancient Athens, more than 2,000 years ago. The lesson is that success does not necessarily breed success. Democracy is not the default form of government. Democracy is a form of government that must be created with courage and determination, and it will disintegrate unless it is constantly nurtured. Today, 2014, 100 years after World War I, the war to end all wars, our democracy is, I believe, being tested. Tested by political gridlock here at home, and tested by the kind of global crises that we are confronting in a troubled world. In my 50 years of public service, and throughout that 50 years, I've seen Washington at its best and Washington at its worst. But I have never seen Washington as partisan and as divided as it is today. There are a lot of reasons for that gridlock. There are thin margins of power between the parties, both in the House and the Senate, and that creates an even greater focus in terms of the party. Redistricting has produced safe Democratic seats, safe Republican seats, so members tend to worry about candidates who run to the extremes. So if you're a Republican, you worry about somebody running to the right, and if you're a Democrat, you worry about somebody running to the left. It tends to draw people to the extremes as opposed to the center, where you need to be if you're interested in finding consensus. California actually has taken some steps to deal with the issue on redistricting, but other states have not. And so there's an increasing division that you can see in the membership of both the House and the Senate, as a matter of fact. Money is playing an enormous role in politics, and obviously the spigot will get even larger with the decision that was made by the Supreme Court recently. PACs, lobbying organizations, the very wealthy, in many ways can suck up power in our constitutional system. And the media is more interested in sound bites than it is in really looking at efforts to find solutions to the problems that confront us. There's a lot of blame to go around for all of the parties, but the result that I'm concerned about is gridlock. It's stalemate. It's the failure to govern. And what we're seeing right now is that leadership in Washington have in many ways largely kind of given up on dealing with the major issues facing this nation. They've given up on any kind of effort at long-term deficit reduction to try to deal with the debt situation that is facing this country. I mean, we are looking at a debt that by 2024 could reach almost 80% of GDP in this country. And no matter what your priorities are, that will consume the resources we need to invest in whatever your priority is. And so any effort to try to deal with the key elements of trying to deal with the budget, issues like entitlements or revenues, largely has been put aside. On immigration reform, which is essential to providing the justice and opportunity that this country has promised, symbolized by the Statue of Liberty, justice and opportunity for those who come to this country. Immigration reform has been pretty much set aside. They've given up on any effort to fund infrastructure. Infrastructure improvements are critical to our economy, and yet about almost 25% of our bridges are dilapidated and almost 35% of our highways need badly needed repairs. Given up on energy issues that are critical to dealing with climate change. In many ways, although they debate the issue of income inequality, they are not taking any steps to, in fact, deal with the challenge of income inequality. And they've given up on trade agreements. Trade agreements that could produce almost $600 billion in world markets, $200 billion in the United States. So what they've essentially done is decided that they aren't going to confront those issues, but wait for the next election and somehow hope that the next election will produce change, when the reality is that the next election is likely to produce even greater gridlock. This country, I don't think, can stand another 2.5 years of stalemate. At the same time that that is happening, in terms of meeting the needs within our own country, or failing to meet the needs within our country, what we've seen in recent events, particularly abroad, is that we are now dealing with a series of very serious threats in a troubled world. And I realize that after 10 years of war, there's an exhaustion in this country about engaging again in another conflict. I understand that. But I also understand that it's important for United States leadership to be there, because it is critical to dealing with a dangerous world. Russia and what they're doing right now in the Ukraine is very dangerous. Having taken over the Crimea, they are now clearly threatening to take over additional parts of the Ukraine. And that cannot be allowed to happen. Syria is a humanitarian catastrophe. Over 140,000 are dead. Almost 8 million are displaced. And if Syria collapses, it will impact on a very volatile region. North Korea remains unpredictable and a serious security threat, not just to the United States, but to the Asia-Pacific region. They are testing nuclear weapons, and they're testing ICBMs. Iran has 19,000 centrifuges that could produce the kind of enriched uranium that could go into a nuclear weapon if they decided to proceed. We are, thank God, in negotiations with them, but those negotiations are difficult. And we have to be prepared if they fail. There's continuing Middle East turmoil. The chances for Israeli-Palestinian peace have faded for the moment again. And China, which is extremely important in terms of our economic ties, nevertheless continues to assert territorial claims throughout the South China Sea and other areas. And there is the danger that I've pointed out of a cyber attack. This is the battlefield of the future. As great as the cyber area is in terms of promoting information, being a magnificent tool for our ability to succeed, it is also the battlefield of the future. And the potential for a crippling cyber attack that could cripple and paralyze our electric grid, our chemical systems, our water, the reality of that is something that we have to confront and to defend against. Our democracy then is being tested. And our leadership today and tomorrow will be tested as well. I believe we can take one of two paths. 2014, this country can go one of two directions. We can be an America in Renaissance. We really can. We can be on the cusp of a strong economic recovery. Our fundamentals are strong. Wherever I go in this country, our fundamentals are strong. We can build on tremendous creativity, tremendous innovation. We have it here. We have it in Silicon Valley. Tremendous creativity, which is so essential to a successful economy. Strengthening our educated and skilled workforce to deal with the new technologies of the future, building a strong middle class, advancing opportunity for all, improving our environment, dealing with the challenge of climate change, improving quality of life, disciplining our budget, and governing our nation, and providing a leaner and more agile defense that can support America's role, diplomatic role, in a very dangerous world. Or we can be an America in decline, in constant crisis after crisis, politically dysfunctional, unable to govern, to take the steps necessary to protect our most basic freedoms, our economy, our national security. Like Athens, it can decline because it was not nurtured by leadership. What path is taken will be determined by how we govern ourselves, how we fail to govern ourselves, but it will also be determined by how we educate our people and the future leaders of this country. The key to both governing and the key to education is something that I thought made the point in a recent Tom Friedman column. It was in last Sunday's New York Times. He was interviewing Laszlo Bock, who is in charge of all hiring at Google. And the issue he was looking at is when you're hiring for Google, what do you look for in an individual when it comes to education? You want to make sure, according to Bock, that you're getting out of education not only a broadening of your knowledge and the skills that will be necessary for working in today's workplace, but your college degree is not a proxy anymore. According to Bock, it is not a proxy anymore for having the skills or traits that you need to do a good job. What are those key traits? What are those key traits? And according to Laszlo Bock, one of the key traits is just sheer grit. Sheer grit. A rigor in your thinking. The guts to take on a more challenging course load. not taking the easy way out. The first thing that Google looks for is a general cognitive ability, the ability to learn things and the ability to solve problems. That is exactly what we need to govern the nation. As I often tell the students at our institute, we govern either by leadership or by crisis. If leadership is there and willing to take the risks associated with leadership, to have the grit necessary to take on those challenges, then we can avoid crisis, and we certainly can control crisis. But if leadership is not there, not willing to take on those risks, not willing to make decisions, if leadership is not there, then we will govern by crisis. And today, too often, we govern by crisis after crisis after crisis. And we can do that. We can do that. You know, as somebody who is in elective office, it's an easy way to go. You don't have to get anybody mad at you. Don't have to raise any taxes, don't have to cut any benefits, don't have to do anything. Just wait for crisis. And when crisis gets bad enough, you blame anything you have to do on crisis. It's a way to survive in office. But there's a price to be paid. And the price is that you lose the trust of the American people in our system of governing. You lose trust in our democracy. And trust in our democracy is, frankly, everything. Look, I know firsthand that governing is hard work. It's tough in a democracy to govern. It's tough at the local level, it's tough at the state level, it's tough at the federal level. Oftentimes you have to deal with people you don't like. I mean, in the Congress there is a broad cross-section of people who represent every area of our society. Some are smart, some are dumb, some are honest, some are not so honest. Some are terrible to deal with. You wonder how they got elected. But you have to deal with them. You have to deal with them. You have to fight for every vote. You got to struggle, and you can't give up. As a member of Congress, when I was there as chairman of the Budget Committee, I participated in every budget summit. President Reagan, President Bush, working with President Clinton, presidents from both parties, the leadership basically said, we're going into a room and we're not getting out of there until we cut a deal. And everything was on the table. Discretionary spending, defense, entitlements, revenues. Everything was on the table. And it was tough negotiating. But we arrived at deals. We arrived at agreements. When I was working in the Clinton administration, I worked with the president on going through every line item of the budget. And we passed that budget by one vote in the House and one vote in the Senate through just sheer hard work. Let me describe one vote that I had to get. It was a vote of a congresswoman from Detroit. And she was listed on our vote count as leaning or voting no. She was a Democrat. And I remember going to her and I saying, Duke, you got to support the president. How can you not support the president? This is a major issue that we need you on in order to vote for the president. She said, I have some concerns, Leon. I just can't do it. Went back to the White House, and the next day I got a call from her, and she said, Leon, come up. I need to talk to you. So I went up, and I said, okay, what can I do for you? She said, Leon, last night I had a dream. I said, what was the dream? She said, I dreamed that Jesus talked to me. I said, what did Jesus say to you? She said, Jesus said to me that I really should support the president. It's really important to support the president. if I get the casino that I want in downtown Detroit. She got her casino. We won by 1 vote. I mean, it is the nature of our system that it takes that kind of grit to be able to fight for every vote to get it done. Same thing is true in foreign policy. Having to confront the challenge, the risks that are involved in dealing with foreign policy. The credibility of our foreign policy very much depends on our word and whether we stand by our word. And whether it's Russia or Syria or Iran or North Korea, diplomacy is effective if we negotiate our diplomacy from strength. I speak of the American dream and giving our children a better life. But as my father taught me, dreams are just dreams. Unless you are willing to work hard, unless you're willing to sacrifice, to take risks, and to fight for what you want, to have the grit essential to making dreams come true. Those values were what my immigrant parents taught me. They're values that made this country great. And they are values that I think are at the heart and soul of what a good education is all about. I realize the challenges that now confront higher education in this country. And there are a huge list that we're all very aware of. The challenge of access to these universities, to be able to give everyone an opportunity to get that kind of education. Affordability. It's almost $1 trillion in debt now in student loans. We just did a poll for the Panetta Institute in which students said their greatest concern is their student loan. Greatest concern. So affordability is a huge challenge. The cuts in state and federal support have been very damaging to research and the ability of these universities to continue to blossom. And what I'm concerned about more is this kind of growing national narrative that devalues education. And there is that growing sense that maybe it's not as important as it was. We must not be afraid to remind ourselves that education is the foundation of our economy and the foundation of our democracy. No democracy, no economy can prosper without thoughtful, informed leadership that not only sustains our present, but guides us through an unknown future. To develop that leadership requires more than mere credentialing. It requires a broad understanding of the world that we live in. It requires a flexibility of the mind, a rigor, a grit that allows us to solve complex problems. Education is not a luxury. It is indispensable to the future of our democracy. I truly believe in American leadership. You cannot be in politics as long as I've been in politics and not be an optimist. I believe that our leadership can rise to the occasion. I mean, we've faced all kinds of crises throughout our history. Depressions and recessions and world wars and natural disasters of one kind or another. And somehow our leadership has always risen to the occasion, and it will again. Why do I believe that? Because frankly, the fundamental strength of America lies in the spirit and resilience and common sense and courage of the American people. As Secretary of Defense, I saw those values reflected in the men and women that serve this nation, that put their lives on the line, and that are willing to fight and, yes, to die for this country. There was, when I was director of the CIA, a bombing that took place. It was a suicide bomber who was supposed to meet with some of our agents and turned out to be a double agent, and had an explosive vest on him. And as he was getting out of the car and they were there to greet him, basically pulled the pin on that vest and it exploded. 7 of our agents were killed as a result of that. A place called Host in Afghanistan. And I remember going there, and on the wall, as I was going through and seeing the damage that had occurred, but there, on the wall there was a plaque with a statement. It was a verse from the Old Testament, Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 8. And then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" And then I said, "Here I am, Lord, send me." In Hebrew, it is Hineni, send me. That, in many ways, is the sound of the trumpet that must summon all of us to action. Surely, if our brave men and women in uniform can respond to that call and have the courage to put their lives on the line for this country, then surely the rest of us can summon a little bit of that grit in order to make the decisions that are needed to govern this nation and to educate our future leaders. The torch has really passed to all of us. That is the nature of our democracy. And that is why education is so important, because it means that all of us have the responsibility to be good citizens, to make an America in Renaissance, to fulfill that American dream of a better life for our children, and most importantly, to strengthen a government of, by, and for all people. God bless you, and God bless our nation.
Well, thank you, Leon. That was most inspiring. I want to thank you. I'd like to thank Helen again for her remarks. And I'd like to thank all of you for joining with us this evening. Please stick around. We have dessert now in the back of the room, and so the evening is still young. Thank you again for being here, and good evening.